This video is going to be kind of fun, actually. This is going to be the first product we're taking a look at that EVGA has launched post-exiting of the, what do we call that? Well, let's see, if Brexit was a thing, EVGAs. Oh, EVGAs. Whatever. Ever since EVGA was like, we're not going to play with you anymore with NVIDIA, and so they've come out with a new CLX loop design for an AIO. Now, I took a look, long before Phil ever worked here, Nick worked here, before I even had a studio. And my old bedroom setup was the first time I had seen a cooler from EVGA. So this is clearly based on that one, but this is like years later. So they've got some neat stuff added to this. We'll kind of take a look at it. We'll unbox it, give it a little kind of a test run here and see if it's worth your money. NZXT Canvas monitors feature more of what gamers want. The Canvas 1440p QHD offers a 165Hz refresh rate for the perfect balance between performance and resolution, while the 1080p Full HD Canvas delivers 240Hz for a competitive edge. Both versions feature AMD FreeSync Premium, 1 millisecond response time, and OSD settings via CAM, allowing for specific settings between games. To see the complete list of Canvas monitors and monitor mounts from NZXT, follow the link in the description below. So you got to understand how a lot of AIOs work here. First of all, there's three sizes. We've got CLX 240, 280, and 360. That's just denoting the fan size. We've got two 120mm fans on a 240, two 140mm fans on a 280, and three 120mm fans on a 360. But you notice in the little corner right here, it says cooled by Asetek. Most AIO coolers on the market are not a quote-unquote rebrand of an Asetek, but Asetek is the ODM. So they're the ones that are basically providing the design and the product itself on the radiator, the tubing, and the pump. Now everything on top of the pump is up to the brand. That's why you see so many differences between AIOs, even though they could all be Asetek designs. And that's mostly because Asetek holds the patent for the closed loop setup. There's some ways around those patents, which is why some other brands exist, but it's very expensive for a brand to go out, tool, manufacture, R&D, and create an AIO that goes around the patent. So most of the times brands will just license from Asetek the right to use, basically, which builds a collaboration there, and then they go full creativity on how it works in terms with your system. So for instance here, the original CLX design, which basically stands for closed loop extreme cooler, they went with an LCD screen on the top. Now we've seen LCD screens for a while now. We've seen it with NZXT, we've seen it with Corsair. I think there's someone else that has one. Asus. Oh yeah, Asus, that's right. But every brand kind of has a different approach as to the purpose of that screen. What I love is the EVGA's simplicity of it. But what I want to see, and we're going to use the 360 for this test because I can sort of compare it to how this old Fractal Design Celsius cooler worked. This was always my go-to cooler for testing. I loved it because it was a single plug. This guy right here, this one 4-pin PWM, which ran off the CPU header through the sleeving into a distribution block right here on the radiator, and all the fans were powered off of that. So it was the simplest to hook up, but it had no screens, it had no software, anything. Now I'm assuming with this CLX 360 from EVGA that we are going to, EVGA, your packaging guys missed. It's still taped, but fixed. So anyway, I'm assuming that this is going to require Precision, which is EVGA's in-house software control for their graphics, their motherboards, their overclocking utilities, all that sort of stuff. So I'm assuming this is probably going to require Precision. It's potentially another piece of software that you have to have on your system. So let's say you're running an Asus motherboard, and you're running a Corsair cooler, and you're running Lee fans, and you're running an EVGA CLX cooler, and you're running a gigabyte graphics card. You would have to have the software for each one of those to make them work. So you'd have to have like iQ for the Corsair product. You'd have to have Precision for the CLX. You'd have to have L-Connect for the NZXT fans. You'd have to have whatever Gigabyte calls their crap for their graphics card lighting stuff. MSI would have been Mystic Light, right? Or you would have to have for Asus the Aura or the Armory Crate. I understand why that's a problem because of the fact that you can't have people writing software for other people's stuff and have it expect to work properly. So the only way that you can have a piece of software controlling your thing exactly as intended is you write it yourself. So it's just the way it is. Moving on, what I'm most interested in are the connections. And you know what's funny about these fans already? These look like they are just using the standard JST. So they would work with anything that uses JST. But here is our mounting brackets for Intel 1700. This is also gonna work with AM5. This is the pump top itself. So remember what I said about the pump top thing? Regarding the Asetek patent, this is the Asetek part, right here. This is your 360 rad, which as you can see, they have EVGA indented on there. It's not like, it's actually like molded into the metal shroud, so that's nice. And then the pump right here, this is the Asetek part. Now everything on top where you see that little plug and stuff, that's where EVGA comes in. This is the LCD screen part. Now you can see this has a direct terminated end to go right into a USB 3.0 or 2.0 header. Sorry, not 3.0, 2.0 header. So this is gonna plug directly into your motherboard. The only problem with this, and I'll see if they include one or not, is the fact that many motherboards are starting to include less of those. Most of the time, all you get now is 2. If you're using some of those other products that I mentioned, they also want to use that header. So more often than not, you'll have to get either a USB 3 breakout to multiple USB 2s or a USB 2 splitter that can split into multiple USB 2 headers. Because back in the day where you had like 5 or 6 along the bottom, now you get like 2 because they're adding multiple USB 3s or even a U.2. So just wanted to point that out. I do like that it's a direct connection because that's cleaner, but you can also get off of like Amazon, eBay, an adapter that goes from this to a USB-A plug, which you could plug into the back of your motherboard if you routed it outside the case, if push came to shove. Here is your manual, multiple languages. Actually has graphics and stuff to show you how to mount things, ideal locations based on push-pull, which screws to use, where to put the washers and all that if you're going under the case, through the case. These are some thick pages though. It's like cardstock. It's very thick. I'm not saying anything bad yet. My problem is cable mess. And that was my biggest complaint with things like, I love Corsair's coolers and design and the way the cooler looks and the top, the LCD screen or not, but you start having tons of cables everywhere, little Commander Pros and stuff. And the more you start having this stuff, the more it really just starts to suck. So this is just you have a couple different ways that it looks like you can plug in here, and I'll have to double check with the manual. You do have a 3-way splitter, 4-pin PWM splitter. This has a SATA power here. So SATA provides power to the pump and the screen. This 4-pin PWM is then intended to go to this splitter to control the fans. This JST plug is for the RGB. And so this is what you have coming off of the pump. And this is what starts to become difficult to cable manage and look pretty. It's unfortunately the sacrifice you make when you start adding a bunch of features and stuff. And then you got this one coming off 90 degrees off of that. So at least have them all coming off the same side, in my opinion. Now if we take a look at the fans, I'm not a fan of this round fan, get it? I'm not a fan of this round shape. I wish they were just a standard cage looking thing. I'm not, this is subjective. The RGB is built underneath this smoke layer right here. So the ring does light up, it's down inside. Because the fan blades are also black, you're just gonna get some subtle lighting off of the ring itself. They're not gonna shine through the hub, they're not gonna shine through the blades, they're not gonna shine through the frame. 2 wires per fan plus a pigtail. Now it's nice because you can daisy chain the RGB together, but you can't daisy chain the power, which would have made this at least kind of nice. So again, we're starting to catch up to Corsair's number of wires here, which is my biggest complaint I've always had with Corsair. And there's the 3 fans. So let's do this. Let me get it wired up. Let me get it plugged into our test bench here, which is my lapped and ground down 7950X, because remember, we know that those suckers get warm. And let's just see how well it works and what software settings look like and what control you have. Now the nice thing about it using an Asetek hold down bracket is all the hardware is the same. So remember how I had to remove the little, or I guess the hardware's a little different on this one, but remember how I had to remove the little standoff screw thing to make
the height proper to come down because I changed the Z-axis height of the AM5 CPU by grinding it down. It means I can actually just use the same standoffs that are on there and put that on there and it'll be fine. So that's one thing to mention. It's a little different in this review versus like if you were to just buy it and put it on your system. Also too, forgot to mention there are rubber pads on these fans that are anti-vibration. Anti-vibration, that way you're not breaking down your computer there and you're on a mountain, zzz, all over the place. You guys know me, you know I'm a cable management snob, and this is what I always fight with brands that decide to go, let's do custom or multiple cables per fan, et cetera, et cetera. And then these go into an adapter that then goes into here, into that main harness. So you can't get rid of it. You can't simplify this. You'd be sitting here bundling it all up, trying to make it look decent. These cables never want to do what you want them to do because they're such fine ribbon cables. They're technically ribbon cables because they're all attached. You can separate them if you want. At least on the motherboard side, which is where I was concerned about it looking really terrible. You can see here, it's not too bad. I zip tied these together, as you can see. I took the header for the USB. So the way I had it oriented is the tubes are at the top. This can go in any orientation in the bracket that you choose to do it. And I'm assuming the software should allow you to be able to flip the orientation. Hopefully, not all brands thought that was important, NZXT. So anyway, hopefully we can change the orientation of the screen based on the way that it's sitting. But then I just zip tied these together like I said, and because I'm only running 2 sticks of RAM because DDR5, high capacity, I just kind of pushed that down in there. We also took the graphics card out because we're going to be using the onboard video built into the new AM5 CPUs, which is awesome, by the way. So one of the things I hated about the old Ryzen CPUs was the fact that they had no iGPU. So if I wanted to do videos like this where I care about the cooler, I don't have a big old graphics card blocking your view of it. Anyway, that's a smoked clear plastic that the LCD shines through. And I have to do a test. It's already dirty. So there was a plastic circle, a protective peelable plastic over the circular part in the center, and then the whole thing had plastic on it. So when I peeled it off, you can still see there's some smudges and stuff. Usually these, the second you wipe them, you get scratches. Now I'm not pushing hard. This is just the weight of the rag because the smoked plastic is it's so soft. Whenever you go in here and start de-dusting your computer, the dust, Counter-Strike joke. Anyway, when you start, trying to get the dust off your computer and like it's landing on it as I do this because it's a dusty environment, it's going to eventually scratch. Now, it's only if you have direct lighting shining on it and the exact angle at which you're looking at it that you'll see it. But the point is, if you have light shining to the back and the scratches eventually get bad enough, you're going to start to see hazing on there. And I don't know why they did that. But whatever. I know it sounds like I'm ripping it apart. It's just I'm seeing a lot of things repeated in other AIOs that I've complained about over the years, just making their way into their newest thing, and it's kind of disappointing. So it's got this little EVGA, kind of a static screen. So the other thing about the smoke is it makes the screen dimmer overall. I honestly feel like it should have been a clear plastic. I really do. Is that a Reese car? Okay, the resolution's actually really good on the screen. It's just the plastic being smoked makes it too dim. I want to see it bright. As you can see, there's the lighted rings inside the fan. It doesn't look terrible. It really doesn't. Anyway, we do have to download the CLX software, by the way. There is a separate software specifically for this. One thing I want to point out, I just downloaded the CLX software, and just like their graphics cards, if it identifies that there's a firmware update needed for any of their devices, graphics cards, keyboards, mouse, the sound card, capture cards, all the stuff they sell, then their software will update the firmware to the latest thing. So that's just worth pointing out. I wanted to show that real quick. But it is installing right now, and the way that you could tell it was actually flashing something was both the pump and the fans went to 100% speed while it was doing it. Okay, so now you can see the orientation. Look at that. It's 90 degrees off from where it was. So before, remember, it was right side up. Now it's not. But we're on a more static screen now. So you can see clock speed, CPU and temperature, or in Celsius, fan speed, and GPU temperature. It's probably looking for, I think, honestly, some sort of a PCIe GPU. That's why it's showing 0C. We are on the iGPU right now, so I may not be seeing that. I can tell it with this little graphic right here what side the tubes are on. So if I point it up and hit apply, yay! Nice. That's actually pretty seamless and quick. This is going to be fan speed
And then down here is pump speed, so they are separate. I'm gonna go performance. But this right here just has to do with screen orientation and then your curves. And you can go manual, by the way. You can just go manually slide it. So what do the fans sound like at 100%?
And remember, this is open air right now, so they would definitely be louder here. There's a lot of airflow back here. This no scientific way to show airflow. It's like a flag. In terms of noise, they're not that loud. One of the reasons why earlier I said I don't like these curved cages like this is I would prefer, because I can feel air splashing out right here. It's like a whole cushion of air right there. There you go, see that? There's a whole cushion of air right here coming out this corner, coming down, and it's happening right there, right there. So there is a gap between the blades, the cage, and the fins. So air wants to take the path of least resistance. Well, going through all these fins, there's quite a bit of resistance. So you're gonna get splashed through here. If the cage is there and seals this off, then all that air, at least most of it, is forced through the fin. So this is some efficiency loss right here. And this is why I do not like rounded fans like this. It's just like I said, you can see that? There's a whole cushion of air right there. There you go, look at that.
But the fans are capping out at 2,300 RPM, CPU's at 37C idle. Is that actually reading? Let's see if that's reading the right sensor for the CPU. So that says 35, that says 41. That says 35.97. So it's a couple C higher actually. So this is where you can customize the LCD screen. We can go picture, we can add a picture there. We got some defaults here. Okay, so there's our soldiery looking guy. Pictures, it's neat for like a theme if you wanted, but honestly, this LCD screen, it's kind of the middle ground between the center panel that we show you how to custom make and then it already being on something. So I would want it to be showing me data of some sort. Dude, I love it. So it's a 480 by 480 screen, and given how small it is, the pixel resolution looks really good at your standard viewing distance. So I'd rather have CPU temp and coolant temp next to each other, and then maybe pump speed, or fan speed's important, and then clock. And then you can change the background. So right now it's got this kind of a carbon fibery looking thing. Ooh, that looks neat. It might be hard to read through there. No, it doesn't look too bad. So that kind of goes with the vaporwave theme I like. This one might be harder to read. Not too bad. You can make it match your theme. Now you can change the font color here, check this out. So you have title. Look, even the text RGBs. Anyway, you can change that to be a color. So if we wanted, we could just do a background color and not do an image at all. But I liked that image right there. Now, you don't have to have 4 things on there. You could have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2, or just 1. So you can kind of change it how you want. You can even put a message on there if you want. You can type your own message like, Jiao is the best. Because I put something custom to it, it has to send it to it. Otherwise, everything else was stored in there already. It's taken a long time to actually send some text. Yay, Jay's the best. You don't have any font though. Like the fonts, that's just ugly. What the heck? Whatever. We're gonna go back to monitor though. There we go. Some basic modes here off. Dude, I like how quickly updates, watch this. Boom! Some of them take time, right? What is this? It's Christmas, so, oh, and then that one's just the rainbowy mode like we had. So not a whole lot of, how fast can you make that? Sick. Not a whole lot of things you can play with on there. It would have been neat maybe if they added a little bit of an LED ring under here like that shines down, because I like when the socket area around it on the motherboard gets lit up. Kind of like my water block does that, the JSU Sense Edition block. So it lights up around your socket. But anyway, we need to do our performance test here real quick. So this is on standard fan curve, performance curve on the pump. We still have PBO enabled, as you can see by the 1000 watt PPT. 87, 88. Actually, this is pretty much exactly as I expected, because remember, I only lost about 4 or 5 C by doing the grinding on the IHS. It was using the new thermal grizzly compound that actually brought us down like 4 more C. And this is the compound that came with the CPU. And that's a 37,136. So that's not even as high as it was, probably because it's a little bit warmer with this setup. If I were to use the thermal compound that DeBauer sent me, it would come down even a few more degrees. But this test needs to test this exactly as it would sit out of the box. If this was a stock untouched CPU, it would hit 95C and lock there as with the other cooler. So that's just the way this particular CPU runs. But what I wanted to see is how quick do the fans respond. You know, it's pretty quick. See, look at the coolant temp versus CPU temp. And that's what I'm saying, like what you need to look for when you start doing your thermal testing is how hot does your coolant temp get? Well, as you can see, the coolant only went up 1C in this test, but as you can see, the coolant temp is not going up very fast. I don't think the software is that invasive. The one last thing I have to test now is I'm gonna apply it, I'm gonna save it, shut down the system. We're gonna turn power off from the power supply, and we're gonna see if it boots back up with everything exactly as I said it. If so, then that's an okay thing for me, because remember, if we're gonna compare to something like Corsair, if you shut down iCUE, only certain things will save to whatever the device is and persist without the software running. That's anything that's considered hardware. So based on the fact that there's no RGB currently showing on the fans tells me it might be persisting. What we need to see right now is once I get in here, will the EVGA logo stop flashing and will we actually get some, yep, there it is. Is the software running? No, it is not. So that's good. If you didn't want that extra piece of software, you could load it up, set it up, and delete it, or stop it from auto starting at least, which is the way it's set now. All right, guys, there you go. New CLX cooler from EVGA. I'm glad to see them trying this new stuff. I mean, they got a lot more time to put into this now. So the screen's a great idea. I wish it was clear plastic, or at least just the LCD screen itself as a lens and not the smoked, because that makes it look darker. The smoked plastic's gonna scratch over time as you wipe it down. I wish the fans were actual square 120s rather than the rounded. As I already showed, air can escape out the side there. I kind of complained about that similar to the other fans that they had, but these are a little bit different than that. The cabling can be a little bit messy, so you have to take some time cable managing that. But overall, I think it's a good cooler. It's gonna perform as well as any other Asetek 360 cooler, but it's nice to see EVGA starting to add more flair to some of the products. Before, they were very like German in the sense that they were like engineered tough, they worked, and they just didn't have many frills. Look at how long it took EVGA to include RGB on their motherboards, because they were a lot like many people in the audience, as they're just like pushed back against it, but eventually you have to adopt it. And this is what we got now, the new CLX coolers. Anyway, go to evga.com if you guys want to check them out. You'll probably see them in some builds coming up just because of the fact that they're convenient to use. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.